Hello, guys, and welcome to the e-commerce leader series, the podcast dedicated to helping founders and e-com leaders navigate the future of online retail with AI. I'm your co-host, Bryan Kinghorn. I'm the head of growth here at Luca, and I'm joined today by Eric, who's the co-founder and CEO of Luca. Hello, Eric. For our guest today, we have Luke Bream, who is the CEO at Valentte, a leader in the premium consumer goods space. So Luke, thank you very much for being here. It's great to have you along. Before we dive into the main topic of conversation, would you mind giving our listeners a bit of an introduction to yourself, your background, and what Valentte does?
Yeah, we're a direct-to-consumer brand. We manufacture home fragrance products. So our main products are candles and reed diffusers. We're a sort of product of COVID. We were around for a long time before that. We started in 2011, but we were a tiny business. And up to the end of 2019, we had 5 members of staff and had sales of sort of 500,000 a year. COVID came along, all our events got cancelled, and we went online, and the business exploded. And we're now 50 times bigger than we were then, and still growing really fast. We're forecasting 50 million in sales this year. So it's been a pretty extraordinary growth, and remains that and more at the moment. It's mad.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. So 2019, you said you were 500,000 turnover.
Yeah,
and you're
5
now,
members.
You're now on track for 50 million.
This year, that's what we're expecting to do.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's an interesting journey, and I think what goes with that is big challenges and big evolution, like the evolution that we're on the moment. It's, you have to, the characteristics of me as a leader, of the business itself, the very characteristics that make you able to grow like that, the sort of scrappy, get things done, are also become the problem at the place that we're at. And
yeah,
you have to sort of let go of all those things and professionalize the business, bring in specialists rather than generalists. And I remain the sort of last generalist, I suppose, within the business. But it's been an incredibly interesting journey, and we've built that off the back of ads, big ad spend, and a very strong understanding of email. But it's you keep learning, and the pace of change in the direct-to-consumer space is just extraordinary. And the technology that's coming through, the opportunities that exist to grow businesses fast, it's almost unprecedented. But equally, it's a winner takes all. We're competing both with our direct competitors in our category, but then we're also competing for a share of wallet and a share of attention with every other company globally. And it really is a time that rewards the best operators, and it finds everybody else out. And I don't mean that to blow our own trumpet, because we learn every single day, but it's you have to be exceptionally good at what you do, and you have to keep learning, because the landscape is changing all the time.
And so where are you now, team size wise? And you mentioned all around the world. So where are you operating? I assume it's beyond just the UK. Is that right?
No, it's just the UK. It's an interesting space, because we think that we can do 100 million a year inside the UK. We're in a very big category, so there's plenty of opportunity for growth. So the honest answer is, why make the business more complex than it needs to be? It's already complex enough. So we've taken the view that we'll get to 100 million, hopefully over the next couple of years in the UK, and then we'll start looking internationally after that. So in terms of team size, we operate a model. We manufacture everything in-house. We do all our own fulfillment in-house, and we do all of our marketing in-house. So what you have is a mixture of agency staff and our own employees. And we've done that because we're quite seasonal. So the bulk of our business is done in the last 3 months of the year. So we have to be mindful of that. So right at the moment, we've got about 110, 120 people on our own staff. And then we will flex up and down on agencies. At peak, we had another 120 or 130 agency staff before Christmas. So it comes up and down. Right now, there aren't many agencies. We might have, I don't know, a dozen or 20 in the business. And and it just we flex up and down as we need it.
Yeah, nice. Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to bring you back slightly before then, talking about the now. What was the initial sort of reason behind? What was the big gap in the market that you initially launched that? Like, why did you start the business, basically?
I think my Justina, my co-founder, originally started it. We were a couple at that time. We lived in a shared house in London. She's Lithuanian. She was very fresh-faced. They'd come over, and she had always dreamed about starting a soap business. So she literally did that. We were making bath bombs and natural soap in a shared house, driving our housemates absolutely demented, and with all this smelly product, nice smelling I might add, but strong smelling product all over the place. And so she started making things on the kitchen table, and we went to Greenwich Market, started with a stall there. Then we had a stall at Covent Garden. And from there, we started doing the consumer shows. And you'd have seen us at horse trials like Badminton Burley, the RHS Flower shows, and county shows all over the country. So I think if COVID hadn't come along, that's where we'd have still been. And we had an online business, but it was tiny. Funnily enough, I had a background online, and I'd always had that intention to build an online business, but you just get trapped in the everyday, earning the money to pay for their next thing, and so we didn't make that break, and so it was tiny, the online business. So it really was a piece of luck in one sense that COVID came along, because it shut down all the shows, and so then we were doing that. And I think the gap in the market that we have is we manufacture everything in-house. You're getting the same quality of product that you would buy from any of your distinguished luxury brands, but you're paying a fraction of the price. We don't sell through retailers. Tiny little bit of that business now, but broadly speaking, we don't sell through retailers. So if you want our product, you have to come and buy it from us direct. And I think our growth has been underpinned by a very strong product market fit, because of our very high retention. 70 to 80% of our transactions are returning customers. Within 30 days, 20% of those new customers have come in and made a second purchase. And we typically at 12 months have got 70% of people have made multiple purchases. So if you push enough new customers in at the beginning of that, you've got a very, very strong pipeline. So, right at the moment, we'll be acquiring it varies depending on spend, between 500 and 700 or 800. I think on Sunday we had more than 800 new customers. So it just depends exactly what we're spending on Meta. Yeah,
nice, awesome. No, it's amazing to hear that story, to be fair. So no, congratulations to you anyway. So I suppose then, building on more recent in that growth trajectory you've had, obviously you've alluded to it already. I'm sure it's been a bit of a crazy journey. What have been some of the biggest sort of operational bottlenecks you've encountered, and how have you integrated AI into the business to potentially help with some of
that? I think operational bottlenecks are a wrap for us, because we manufacture. They've been around the logistics of all of that in the early days. Financing's been a huge piece. I still own 100% of the business. We've got no external funding beyond debt finance, and that's super challenging and very expensive. And growing a business consumes money. You need more people, you need more equipment, you need more premises to trade from. Then you need to spend money to acquire customers. So growing a business and financing that is very, very challenging. I think as you get into AI for us was relatively new, and I suppose we've discovered that within the last 6 months, and it's could even be marginally less than that, and it's come about with our understanding of our need to scale ad spend and uncovering or unlocking about Andromeda and it's the Facebook algorithm pushing towards creative volume, and realizing that it was impossible to achieve creative volume. Doesn't matter how big a team is, you just can't make enough to satisfy the creative volume that's required. So we started investing and looking very, very seriously at AI as a consequence of that. And that was a big unlock for us. And we employed, I suppose quite early on, like about 4 or 5 months 4 months ago, I think we took on our first full-time AI employee, and he had an interesting background. He did his first degree in Mumbai on AI. Then he came to Manchester University and did a master's again in AI. He spent a year working for an American company remotely, building out ads system, software to make ads. And then he joined us, and that was a revelation, because I mean, to indicate how seriously I take that, he's in the office next door to me. And for a relatively, I put that in commas, junior member of staff, he reports directly into me, because it's so important what he is doing. And he's involved in lots of the decision making surrounding the marketing decisions that we're making. The first task we put him in to do when he joined the business, we gave him we put him in to do some stuff on customer service to reduce our reliance on, depending on the time of year, we might have a dozen people in customer service, and we put him in to build out a load of functionality to improve the way that operates. And that was a good project for him to start off with. It was kind of like, it got him to know the business a bit, got him to understand our customers, because a lot of that entailed going through every single support ticket we'd ever had into the business, analyzing those, looking for patterns, and so on. So that was an interesting project. But then really, it became very evident that the biggest value add that he could bring to us was what we were doing in ads. And so his first project was really looking at the tools that we were analyzing to create ads and so on. He tends to use everything like that first, and we do a mixture of building stuff directly ourselves, using external tools, and he'll figure those out. And then the most recent piece, I suppose, we're doing is we're trying to bring everything together, because there's a lot of duplication of effort. I've got about 20 people in my marketing team, and if you think about that, you've got a CRM team looking after sort of email and SMS and WhatsApp and things like that. You've got an ads team, more than 10 people in our ads team to support our meta spend. And then you've got a social team as well that are doing things on TikTok and organic and kind of creators and partnership stuff and so on. And all of those people are using off-the-shelf AI tools, whether it's Claude or Chat GPT. But what we've just recently realized is that there's a lot of duplication of work going on there, and there's no central context. I mean, what we're realizing is that context is everything for AI, and they're all using greater or lesser amounts of context that may or may not be accurate. And when you build into the fact that data that's coming in from our ad platform, that's coming in from our emailing platform, that we need to give greater and greater context. So right at the moment, the task that I've got in working on is to figure out how we have a central source of truth for context that everyone then is building on the back of, rather than each person building their own separate strand of that. So I think it's an incredibly interesting time. I don't think we're all that good at it. Does that make sense? We grab hold of little bits of it, but I think it's unbelievable the opportunity that exists at the moment to move things. In the past, you'd got pre-internet, you had big companies who had moats or big walls around them and protected all the information. No one had access to that. Then the internet came along, and you had a period of time where the skill set that was required was all about search. Could you search, identify the information you needed? Now with AI, everyone has the same access to the information. Sure, you may have to figure out prompting, but broadly speaking, the smallest guy sat in his bedroom to the biggest corporation have got access to the same information. So now it's all about speed of execution. How quickly can you translate an insight into reality? And that drives a lot of our thinking in terms of ads at the moment, because how quickly can we come up with a concept and get that live into our ad account? Represents the real direction of travel for us in ads at the moment. So look, I think it's a fascinating time. I don't know if that helps answer where we're at.
Absolutely. So I suppose there's obviously a few things to unpack within all that. I suppose one of them is, my next question was around all the different tools. So there's lots of different tools that we've got out there right now, that are AI tools to help with various different parts of the business, which is great. We've got them, but what you've just alluded to there is you've got all these different data sources around there. So you've got, I don't know if you're on Shopify, but Shopify or an equivalent. You've got your accounting software, you've got your Meta ad account, you've got your Google ad account, you've got your email marketing, you've got all these different softwares out there, and they're all working pretty much independently of one another.
Yeah.
So what are you using day to day, if anything, to decipher all the information that's coming out of those different platforms and allowing you to make sort of critical decisions for the business? Is there anything, or are you having to go in and look at all the different?
Yeah, right now the answer to that is no. We're not, and I think that's what we're. This is right, completely current with our thinking, is the realization that we need to join these up. Now, part of what we did, we migrated from Klaviyo to Bloomreach about 6 months ago, I suppose. That was a really significantly both expensive and difficult migration. And that was done to give us a sort of single point of truth around the customer. So that gives us one part of that piece. But in terms of the rest of it, no, it's completely disjointed at the moment. And that's really what I've tasked my guy internally to go away and think about, is how do we change that? Because what we've started to do, we've brought the same thinking for ads, for example. And when you think about ad creation, we've started to think about email in the same way, that essentially email is just a glorified ad. And the same kind of technology that we would use to generate AI ads, we've brought straight into email as a way of doing that. But what that doesn't do is take into account any material learnings. And what you've got is all the separate platforms building their own AI tools inside there that you can go in and search and get it to do things. But when you take email as an example, it's still massively antiquated, because what you really need to be able to do is get much quicker from idea to execution and test. When you think about what we're doing in ads, we're launching thousands of ads to testing, and the algorithm ultimately decides what the winner is. Like we can't predict what the winner's going to be. Yeah. You can show me 10 ads, even though I've spent millions of pounds on ads. Right? You can show me 10 ads, and I will not be able to tell you which one's going to be the winner. Right? So I don't bother trying anymore. We come up with concepts. It goes in. Whatever ads get spent are the right ones. Now, we should be doing the same thing with email, given how important email is for the technology. It just isn't there at the moment. And the feedback loop isn't there, because that's the critical thing about all this. You've got to have testing going on, and then you've got to feed back the results of that. And then you actually need the AI to interpret that data, which it's not quite there. I think where AI is at the moment is it's not full automation yet. So it still requires strategy people, and it still requires creative people. What it brings is the ability to turbocharge volume, but it still needs the intelligence, I think, behind to sit alongside that. So I don't think marketers' jobs are dead, and I don't think designers' jobs are dead, or strategists' jobs are dead. But they're still needed. But it seems, I'm not sure. We're not there yet at all. I can just see the direction of travel.
Yeah. So I was just building up on that. I don't be too harsh on yourself. I don't think, this is still bleeding edge. I think people are still trying to figure this out. Tools are coming up. There's an interesting word I learned last week, which is skeuomorphism, and it's basically the ability that a new tool like AI has to expand the universe or the design space of use cases, meaning you were suddenly able to do things in a novel way that weren't technically possible pre-AI. And it just really requires you to rework a little bit everything that you've learned up until now in your career. And that's really hard. I mean, it's really hard just because creativity is incredibly hard.
You have to want that. You have to really want that, and I think that's true. Coming back to scaling a business, I have an expression in the business like that we earn the right to get bigger, right? And I apply the same thing to myself as why I earn the right to do the job that I do. So it requires most businesses cap out at the limit of their founders basically ability, and it's exceptionally difficult to push through that at various points. You get a common step at the sort of somewhere between say 10 and 20, 30 million. It's very difficult to get beyond because you've got to significantly change. And I think my solution to that is to spend a colossal amount of time. I will spend 6 hours a day. It could be longer, researching and learning and so on. And I think the future for business really is a hybrid between that. You need people in your organization who are prepared to do that much learning and also have an understanding that a lot of what they learn isn't going to end up being used or be relevant. In my ad team, for example, we have a sort of standing joke that 90% of the work that they do goes in the rubbish bin. It doesn't even get any spend. So they do all this work and the algorithm just completely ignores it. It might spend zero. The
one that will work will be the one that was no time or effort was really into it. Yeah.
100%. And I think that's true of learning as well. Like you think about the level of new information that's coming at us at the moment. And I think the real skill set now is to be able to assimilate that information, take it in and pick out the nuggets, because ultimately as a business, what we've got to figure out is what's the number one constraint? What's the real problem that we're trying to solve? And we have to focus all our efforts on that, but we have to be open to all these different ways of solving it. So, and that's a challenge. I think for every business, to unlock that.
It's a challenge, I think, in the absolute. It's also a challenge now because the pace at which things are moving is accelerating. It really is. I mean, we see it firsthand. It's what used to change every 2 months now changes every 2 weeks, and God knows where this is going to go in the second quarter of this year. But and it's I think you're 100% right. You need to be at the forefront of what's going on. You need to continuously challenge yourself, your assumptions, your prior, anything that you've learned up until now, ingest all this new information and kind of make do with a synthesis for how best to run your business. But the pace at which it's moving, it is challenging. I mean, we are deeply seated into AI. And I can tell you that even me, every week something new comes up, which is not going to say completely changes the game, but not far from it. And it's trying to absorb all of this and then kind of like make it work for yourself, right, in your own particular situation. But at the same time, like you said, it's incredibly fun. It's not boring, that's for sure.
I don't think there's ever been a more interesting time. I mean, I've been in business more than 30 years, and I don't think there's ever been an exciting, interesting time. I think we're going through another industrial revolution, and that is both, any time you've got very rapid change, that both presents colossal opportunities for people who are on the right side of those changes, and also massive risks for people who aren't. You just have to hope and pray you're on the right side of that.
So Luke, you mentioned that obviously there's still a place for marketers, there's still a place for strategists. You mentioned as AI is not replacing some of these things, but are there any areas within your business that using AI has allowed you to keep a leaner team than you would have had otherwise?
Customer service, without question. Yeah. A lot of the responses that are coming into that. I think in truth, it's in our ads team, because although I've got 10 people in my ads team, essentially those creative strategists are able to use AI to create the ads that they would have done. And before, I think you'd have needed a similar sized team again on top of that to do the creative elements of what we're trying to do in ads. So there's no doubt that that's taken. I've still got those people in the business, but I think it's taken volume out of it.
Yeah.
I think one of the other interesting things about AI that we've seen as a brand is the guardrails that you need. You know, my head of brand, I mean, she just found it really painful because as we pushed into AI, she and I just had to have this conversation, which is, look, for the next period of time, and I can't give you a definition of how long that's going to be, I need you to close your eyes to what we are making, because it's going to, we just cannot have tight guardrails in while we figure out how to use these tools. And so, and what we then discovered was we had to basically completely release them, make things that we would never normally have made. And then gradually, as we got further in, we were able to reintroduce the guardrails. And that was a relatively short and easy process to do with statics. It was much more difficult to do that with video. And we're still not at the point where we're really introducing those guardrails at the point with video. That was super difficult for her as a brand person to let go like that.
Yeah.
And I think for many more mature brands than us, without the technology focus that we've got as a business, I'm not sure they'd be able to do that, especially if that thing was coming from an agency, you know, like, or that content was coming through the agency. So there are still challenges with implementation, I think, culturally, to get brands to or understand that actually volume is probably more important than the minutia of how that individual piece of content looks. But that's a hard lesson for people to accept.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously, I think I kind of know the answer to this, but you, as obviously the leader of the organization, are very, I would imagine, you've got this vision about how AI is going to help you in the business. How's the AI adoption throughout the team and the entire team in the business? Are they comfortable with it? Is there a bit of reluctance? Like, how does that look within your business?
It massively depends on departments. So when we tried to bring in AI into the customer service team, there was huge resistance. You know, you could argue they were almost sabotaging that. So it's that was a tough sell. In terms of my marketing team, which now use AI much more, it's I think you have to carefully do it. You've always got a spectrum of viewpoints on it. So some people are going to embrace learning new things. Others are much more resistant to learning new things, and it requires strong leadership within the business to say, look, this is non-negotiable. This is the direction of travel. This isn't, you're not losing a job over this. This is us evolving the job. This is what the future of the job looks like. And it needs leadership to do that. I think it needs to come right from the top. I wouldn't have said that 3 months ago. I don't think. I'd have said it could have been managed by a junior team or whoever was leading up that team. I don't think that's the case now. Having seen how difficult that is at getting adoption, I think it's got to come right from the top. If the person at the top doesn't understand that, or it's not that I necessarily need to know how to use the AI, but I have to massively embrace that to encourage it from that level. Otherwise, I don't think you'd get that level of adoption.
Yeah.
They'd be too scared of making a mistake, I think. And I also think, given how important it's becoming, I think you have to be having people actually in the business who fully understand it, actual AI experts. That's been probably the single biggest unlock for us, was having someone on the team who lived and breathed that.
Yeah, 100%. It's fascinating. I mean, we talked a lot thus far about how you are using or implementing AI processes to optimize what you were already doing before. If I switch gear a little bit, have you had a chance to think about, just at a much higher level, the kind of customer behavior shift that invariably we're going to see in the market, where before, someone used to see an ad on Instagram, they like what they see, they come onto your site, they convert, and then they become a repeat client. So that's the state of the world today. And I think very quickly we're going to go into a state of the world where increasingly people are just going to go to ChatGPT and say, I need to buy candles, go and get me the the five best that I can buy, and you need to be Valentte needs to be on that list, right? So how do you think about that?
I think beyond having an awareness that that is the direction of travel, we are not doing that, and it has been a discussion internally, and I think again this comes back to picking your battles and not trying to fight on every front. We've very much taken the view that yes, we can see that's what we're going to need to do. It feels a bit like old school SEO, and I suppose what we've taken the view on is that, like SEO, we choose not to do it because it's so fragile. It's a moving, shifting landscape all the time, and so we've taken the view as to not get involved in that, and to go down sort of in the customer relationship, using ads to acquire customers, and then own the customer relationship in terms of email or SMS or WhatsApp, and so I think it's going to be a very important space, but like SEO, it's going to be challenging. And I think it is obviously changing so much. When I think about my own search behavior, I'm no longer searching in Google at all. So you've gone from a situation where that represented your entire mechanism for acquiring knowledge to almost not using it. I mean, I'm much more likely to search in YouTube, as I suppose it's still owned by Google, but I'm much more likely to search in YouTube or be searching inside one of Claude or ChatGPT. So it's a big change. It's coming. I think we're still on the very early stages of the acceleration. Actually, like it feels to people who are thinking a lot about AI, it feels ubiquitous, like everyone's on this. I don't think it's there yet, actually, mass adoption. I think there's still quite a long way to go from that, but you can just see the acceleration that is coming, and we're in another mobile phone take-up phase, or some really big adoption phase is likely to come. I think the main thing ultimately with all this stuff is as people start using it and realizing it's better, like they just get the answers quicker.
It feels magical. I mean, it really does. I mean, it's look, I mean, you don't go from a standing start to 900 million weekly active users in 2 years if it wasn't. For me, it was the same thing as that. I don't know if you remember the first time I used Google Map, whatever it was, in 2008. I mean, it was like, this is so good. So anyway,
and
it's an unbelievable time, isn't it?
Yeah, building on that then, Luke, and looking ahead then, how do you see AI helping you specifically in your business over the next 3 years, let's say?
I think it's all about data analysis. It's all about implementing faster. So using AI to analyze all the inputs, both from within our own data sources, external data that's coming in, to ultimately serve the customer better or more effectively, create products that we think they're going to like more, create better advertisements, better ways to sell to them, more effective mechanisms to sell and to grow. So I think the opportunity for business is insane, insanely valuable, and there will be significant winners over the next few years. I think it's never been easier or quicker to build large businesses as a result of the technology that's coming. But equally, it's never been, because you're now competing with every other business or every other person in the world. So you've got to be better. And I can't wait to see how that pans out as we're doing it. I look at the difference. I've been in business for a long time, with this business and businesses before, more than 30 years. And I've never seen the change that fast. I look at what we are doing inside the business now, and I compare it to a month ago, or I compare it to 3 months ago, and it's extraordinary. And I also look at the development of my team. I've got quite a young team, and their ability now to assimilate knowledge is faster. I wish I was learning at the pace that they're learning now when I was their age. So I think they're going to go on to do incredible things because the technology gives them the ability to do that.
Yeah.
But I think we should be teaching young people how to learn or how to acquire knowledge. There is a very definitely a skill set of knowledge acquisition that young people need to acquire, and I don't necessarily they come fully formed with that or realize that the schools aren't necessarily teaching them to do that. Certainly we spend a lot of time internally with my marketing team teaching them how to acquire knowledge, and how to piggyback off the back of that. So we share a lot of information because it's about context. Within the business, I'm very transparent about the overall metrics of the business, whether it's sales or profitability or any of those things, because I think like the models, if they've got context of how we're performing or how our ads are performing or what they're doing in ads, that helps the team when they're doing an email. So I think this transfer of knowledge is really important.
Amazing. And so obviously you've explained already the previous 5, 6, 7 years, let's say, where you were. So where are you going to be in the next 5 years then, Luke?
I don't know. Look, I have, ever since I was a teenager, I've dreamed about building £1 billion business. I am in a category that is big enough to do that, a global marketplace. And am I good enough? Is the business good enough to execute up to that level? I don't know, but that's ultimately what we challenge ourselves every single day to try and fulfill.
I'll tell you what, Luke, we'll definitely do a podcast when you reach the 100 million mark. We'll do another one when you reach the 500 million mark, say 6 months later, and then we'll do another one at the billion mark. For sure.
You're a good man, Eric. That's really good.
But I've never seen. So first of all, I mean, hats off, you bootstrapped. Second of all, clearly you have very good unit economics to be able to bootstrap. We've seen so many other businesses that are about the same size as you, 50 million, revenue mark. I mean, these people are incinerating cash in distribution with unit economics, which are rather thin, if not negative. And they are in a very, very uncomfortable position, right? Because once the spigot stops at the investor level, I mean, okay, you have a 50 million top line business, but ultimately you have nothing. And so, yeah, congratulations, well done.
Yeah, I mean, I remember many years ago looking at, the investors about scar tissue, looking for founders with scar tissue, and I've had 2 businesses in my younger years go bust. One in my early 20s, another one in my late 20s. I was early 30s, I can't remember. And you learn really hard lessons through doing that. And I remember my first business, I had an investor in that business, and I was called in. The business wasn't doing very well, and I was called into a main board meeting of the investor's company. And I had to give a 5-minute presentation. They said, go and wait outside. And I came back in and they said, we're shutting the company down. And that was a really, it's probably in hindsight, it's probably the right thing to do, right? I'm not saying it wasn't, but it was a real harsh lesson in the dynamics of that. And I talk to other young entrepreneurs and they're talking about raising investments and that's our plans. And I said, look, do everything you can to avoid that, because whenever you first investment, you're always going to give away chunks of your business. If it's the least valuable, it's the least worst time to take it. You give up control, and you're then on a treadmill of constantly requiring investment. Whereas if it's your own money and you're forced to go through that process of bootstrapping it, you learn discipline. Your business model evolves with very specific characteristics that you've developed to cope with not having very much money. Now, there's loads of iterations of our business that come about as a direct result of that other businesses wouldn't do, because you need to learn that particular skill set. So we have a very particular skill set, a very particular way of doing business, and that suits us, and it's kept us. Has it been easy? No, God, not for a second, and that comes in waves. At times the business is nice and easy to run and you think, oh, this is all nice, and then other times the wheels fall off. And it's incredibly challenging, and you wish you had more money in the bank, you know. But I wouldn't change the situation for the world. I'm a master of my own destiny. And I urge other young entrepreneurs to try and do the same thing. I think there's a lot to be said for it, for owning your business.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the heuristics that I like is that resources are finite, but resourcefulness is infinite. And yeah, working under constraint, that's the mother of all inventions, right?
It is.
Yeah, so
Forces you
well
to be
done.
creative, doesn't it? Thank you.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, amazing, absolutely incredible. Thanks very much, Luke, for your time and sharing all your knowledge and expertise. Where can our listeners find you in the business? Where's the best place to find you in Valentte?
LinkedIn. Anyone can reach out to me on LinkedIn. Just send me a request. I'll always accept. Happy to chat with people on there. And I do a little bit on Instagram, but not a lot. But you'll find me at Luke Bream on Instagram.
Perfect. Nice one. Thank you very much, Luke. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the e-commerce leader series. Thanks for a fantastic conversation.
Thank you very much.